I'm Dr. John Bickford in the elementary middle level education department in the College of Education at Eastern. I specialize in social studies education. I teach elementary and middle level education classes on social studies theory and social studies methodology, both at the undergraduate and graduate level. Sometimes I teach classes on adolescent social, emotional, behavioral development. I'm a qualitative researcher. I focus mostly on social studies methodology and authentic assessments. And a couple of years ago, I noticed that when political cartoons were used very frequently in social studies methods classes, in social studies classrooms, a lot of social studies researchers were encouraging teachers in the field to use political cartoons for students to interpret. And I noticed that this was all interpretation. And there was a lot of discrepancy between what encoded messages were inside the political cartoons. Like, did the cartoonist intend to encode this message? And a lot of times there'd be disagreements with teachers and students. This happened both in my own class when I was teaching 7th grade, and also when I was since I've been at Eastern. And I've noticed that one of the problems with this, you never really know what the artist intended because they don't say it. They don't really share what they intended to encode, but people can interpret it, and a lot of times people can get confused. Another thing, when it comes to these interpretation is a middle tier thinking level. It's a middle tier thinking skill. It's not even close to one of the top 3 as defined by Bloom's taxonomy or Anderson and Krathwohl's revision of Bloom's taxonomy. The highest levels are evaluation and creation. So one of the things I started having students do when I was teaching 7th grade is create their own original political cartoons, where they would take primary source evidence and secondary historical interpretations, and they'd compare and contrast with, say, historical fiction novels, and they'd create their own political cartoon, and then they'd share it with the class. It started out with something as simple as drawing it, and then they'd present it in the class. And a lot of times with the drawing, you'd have really good artists spend way too much time on it, or they'd be very self-conscious about their work, or a lot of times very poor artists wouldn't want to be judged, because they'd have stick figures and things, and these are 7th grade kids. So around 2006 or 7, my students started using PowerPoint and Microsoft Paint to digitally alter internet images and add text and modify things to create one-slide PowerPoint displays of a political cartoon. And this is the highest level of Bloom's taxonomy. They're creatively expressing a newly constructed understanding based on evaluation of all sorts of evidence and primary sources. And I've started analyzing those and examining them. I've had 4 or 5 different articles published on this, on students' original political cartoons. And I really enjoy it because the unique thing here, when it comes to, say, the artist's problems earlier when they were drawing it, the best artists sometimes take the longest, and finding images is quick. And sometimes the worst artists are very self-conscious about it, say drawing faces or drawing the White House. Like, you can draw a house, but how can you distinguish that as the White House? There's a lot of details that are very hard, and it's so easy, and it's effective and efficient technologies. Microsoft Paint, the internet, and PowerPoint technologies makes it really effective and efficient, and the kids feel very, very comfortable and confident with their work. The unique thing about this, it started out as really a learning assessment. An authentic learning assessment at that, a show me what you learned activity as opposed to a summative or formative assessment. And the kids were very creative, and they were very unique in their presentations. The unique thing about it that I've stumbled across after I started examining these authentic assessment learning activities, that one kid's political cartoon, when he presents it to the classroom, when she shares it with her friends, then becomes a teaching tool for everybody else. And as some of the political cartoons that I've submitted can show you, that where one person is expressing what they know in one political cartoon, when that one political cartoon is shared with the class, it's a teaching tool for everybody else. Everybody else in the room is trying to interpret what this person encoded, what messages were encoded. And unlike with professional political cartoons, the artist is in the room. and the artist can share what she originally intended to encode, what textual messages, why she organized the textual messages and the visual symbolism the way that she did. And students can be very, very complex in their thinking. They can be very demonstrable in sharing what they understood using visual symbolism and encoded messages and textual statements. The unique part about it is how this learning assessment then becomes a teaching tool for other students. In a way, it's kind of like the idea of passing understandings forward, where one kid learns it and shares it, and then other kids learn from what that kid shared. In a way, it's kind of like a science experiment where everybody does their own science projects, and then there's presentations at the end, and everybody walks around looking at everybody else's learning assessment. If the science experiment is a learning assessment for that one kid, it is also used as a teaching tool when everybody else walks around and learns about it. And the unique thing is the way that it builds on each other. And you're not valuing the artists over the non-artists, because everybody can learn to work with PowerPoint and Microsoft Paint. And I've extended this from just a teaching methodology and an authentic assessment learning activity where I've published different articles on the critical thinking behind it. That was one, and then another one on why these technologies are more efficient and effective than using hand-drawn cartoons. I've also categorized them as which types of political cartoons are the best for learning assessments, which ones are most demonstrable of expressing and understanding, and also which ones are the best teaching tools. And I've also organized how different graphic organizers, how different substitutionalists, or different methodological steps can enable students to more aptly construct and express their understandings using this visual media. In the meantime, what I'm focusing on, since I've defined the critical thinking skills that are involved in this, and since I've defined different steps to work with this, and since I've been working with different graphic organizers and different substitutionalists, different methodological steps for teachers to use with their students to get adolescents to more aptly construct and express understandings. I've also tried to examine how it affects learning, because it's one thing to say that this is an engaging and enticing methodological step, or that this is an authentic way to assess students' learning. It's another thing to examine how did they learn. And one of the things that I'm doing right now, two of the things in two different classrooms, I'm currently investigating how if teachers taught a unit one way, and then gave a test, a formative assessment test at the end one way, and they did this last year, how would it be if they were to do the exact same lessons this year with the same content, with the same test, but instead have 2 or 3 days of where one or 2 days they're creating and sharing original presentations, and then the next day they're interpreting original political cartoons in their presentations. And I'm trying to measure the effect on formative assessments, how much these authentic assessments impact students' learning as demonstrated through their scores on formative assessments. That's one of the things I'm examining. Another thing I'm examining is when it comes to students expressing what they're understanding through the original political cartoon, how do students of different ages and different cognitive abilities express and understand their opinions through original political cartoons? I'm working with one teacher in particular where she has a group of students in her classroom. She has 3 different groups of students that are homogeneously grouped by high, middle, and low achieving students as determined by different summative assessments on ISATs and MAP scores. And I'm examining right now how the highest of kids and the lowest of learners, how they express and understand themselves differently. And it's very unique seeing where the encoded messages that the different cognitive ability students can express, and also the different ages. And this is mostly with 6th and 8th graders, just for compare and contrast points.